Mark, thank you. Joining us now is Congressman Jake Auchincloss, a Democrat from Massachusetts and a Marine who fought in Afghanistan, in fact, led an infantry unit in Helmand Province back in 2012. Congressman, welcome to Balance of Power. When I spoke with you a couple of weeks ago, you were very much in support of President Biden's confirmation of this plan to withdraw troops by the end of August. Now that you've seen the images that we have all seen, obviously, the Taliban rolling into the gates of Kabul long before anyone thought. The optics of American diplomats burning documents atop the embassy. Do you still feel the same way?
This president did what commanders-in-chief are supposed to do. He took all the available information he had from the Situation Room, and he made a tough decision. He had two choices. One was to ramp up the American presence in Afghanistan and continue for a 21st year, a failed forever war, with no end game that was viable. Or two, to finally tell the American people and the Afghan government the hard truth that you cannot win a counterinsurgency without a political solution, and that to have a political solution, you needed statesmanship from leaders in Afghanistan, which they provided none of.
Congressman, I want to just quickly play a bit from the president on July 8th and get your reaction on the end of it. Take a listen to what the president had to say.
There's going to be no circumstance where you see people being lifted off the roof of a embassy of the United States from Afghanistan. The likelihood there's going to be the Taliban overrunning everything and owning the whole country is highly unlikely.
Congressman, was the president just trying to project calm, or did he really think that the Taliban taking over the country was not inevitable?
One of the scenarios mapped out for the president as he was making his decision was a complete Taliban takeover of Afghanistan. What's more telling than the speed, however, is the lack of will from Afghan security forces in contesting the Taliban. Now, I fought alongside Afghan unit police. I know that these are good tacticians. I know that they care about their homeland, but their will to fight evaporated because their leadership in Kabul, instead of providing them with bullets and rations, continued to line their own pockets and let corruption rot from within any chance of a nation state in Afghanistan. We gave 20 years to this country for them to plant the seeds of civil society, of rule of law, of democratic governance, and the Afghan leadership simply did not respond. We had no partner to win this war with.
Talk to us about our allies who are still there, Congressman. 6,000 to 7,000 troops, we understand now, protecting the airport in Kabul. We've spoken about the interpreters, the drivers, the many people in Afghanistan who helped Americans for the last 20 years. There are thousands who still have yet to get out. Do you believe we have an apparatus to make that happen, or is this going to be every man for himself?
The United States now has a series of cascading missions. First and foremost, secure the international airport and defend and evacuate American personnel. Second, evacuate allied Afghans who are at special risk because they work with us as interpreters, because they were prominent advocates for the rights of women and girls, because they were journalists. And third, maintain an over-the-horizon counterterrorism capability so that we can neutralize terrorists to whom the Taliban may be giving safe harbor.
Congressman, what could Congress do? Is there anything you and your colleagues can do to accelerate the process for these Afghan translators, cleaners, contractors that supported the U.S. in this mission?
Congress has already streamlined the special immigrant visa process to make it simpler and expedited for those who are applying. But most importantly, we need to keep the pressure and the accountability on this administration to continue those evacuations and to work with NGOs throughout Afghanistan to provide passage for those who are looking to leave the country and have a special risk categorization. And secondarily, we've got to understand what the terrorism threat now is in Afghanistan. Taliban freed many of the prisoners at Bagram Air Base, for example. Some of those prisoners are allied with al-Qaeda. For the last 20 years, the United States counterterrorism mission in Afghanistan has actually been largely successful. Osama bin Laden is dead, of course, and we have prevented any attacks on the homeland from that country. That needs to maintain its efficacy going forward.
We're all trying to make sense of this, Congressman, obviously, which is why we wanted to speak with you today. I wonder what the conversation is like among veterans, however. Have you spoken with any of the men you served with, men and women you served with in Afghanistan, to try to get some kind of rationality around what's happening? And I would add to that, Do you believe Afghanistan now will not be used as a base of terrorism against the U.S.?
Well, I'm not going to conjecture in such a fluid situation on what the future portends for Afghanistan. What I will say is that it must not be used as a base for terrorism operations. The United States has the prerogative to insert special operations forces and to neutralize terrorist threats anywhere in the world. And we are, of course, going to maintain that prerogative in Afghanistan. That'll be a focus of questioning in the security briefing for members of Congress in the coming weeks. To your earlier question about, as a veteran, how am I responding to this? It's anguishing. It's anguishing. I was there in 2012. I patrolled through Taliban-controlled villages. I worked with interpreters and I worked with villagers. The human cost of these last 20 years is tremendous. My anger, though, is not directed at a president who had the integrity to finally tell the American people a hard truth. It's directed at the U.S. national security establishment over the last 20 years, who knew that counterinsurgency could not succeed in this country and yet continued to tell the American people half-truths and lies, and also at Afghan leadership, who were given a golden opportunity to work with their people to build a nation state and instead squandered it on corruption.
20 years, $1 trillion, a congressman. There was only one representative who voted against going to Afghanistan on September 14th, 2001.
Barbara Lee.
Was Congresswoman Barbara Lee, was she correct?
The United States had to execute its counterterrorism mission in Afghanistan. We had to bring Osama bin Laden to justice. We had to ensure that there could not be future strikes on the U.S. homeland from Afghanistan. The counterterrorism mission was appropriate, and we should have maintained just that tightly scoped military imperative. Where we went wrong was Bush and Cheney and Rumsfeld allowing that CT mission to mutate into a boondoggle of a counterinsurgency mission that had ambitions to build a nation, to craft a democracy without a viable political partner on the other side. The Soviet Union, Great Britain, heck, Alexander the Great could have told us that you cannot build a nation in Afghanistan without partners amongst the various ethnic groups, and we did not have them.
Alexander the Great in Helmand, Providence, where Joe has told me about you being there. Congressman, thank you so much for your time today. Congressman Auchincloss, a Democrat from Massachusetts, as well as your time and for your service for this country. This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and Radio. This is Bloomberg.